Okay, let's dive right into this. If you're stepping into the world of graduate research, specifically an MA thesis in education or applied linguistics, it can honestly feel like you're standing at the base of an impossible mountain. But what if you had a literal map to the summit? Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to explore a brilliant framework designed by Professor Mahmoud M.S. Abdullah that completely demystifies the whole master's thesis process. It breaks the whole shebang down into 8 clear, manageable domains of competence. To make this framework incredibly digestible, we can group those 8 domains into 5 logical phases. We've got the reality check, laying the foundation, designing the blueprint, gathering and analyzing the data, and lastly, writing and professional conduct. So, let's start with phase 1, the reality check. Before we even breathe a word about data or literature reviews, we need to take a massive weight off your shoulders right now. Now, what's really interesting about this is the actual expectation placed on you. You are not expected to produce a landmark Nobel Prize-winning contribution to human knowledge at the MA level. Nope. Your thesis serves as a structured demonstration of research competence. That's it. You're not trying to fundamentally change the world. You're simply proving that you know how to rigorously study it. Takes a bit of the pressure off, right? Right. With that pressure officially lifted, we move into phase 2, laying the foundation. This covers domains I and II, and it's all about conceptualizing your exact problem and grounding it firmly in the literature. Domain I is really your foundational cognitive skill. You can't just run with some vague, abstract idea. Consider this precise progression. First, you identify a genuine gap in the research, then formulate a precise problem and clearly articulate why it actually matters. Then, and this is absolutely crucial, you draw a boundary around your study by defining its exact scope and variables. Finally, you translate all of that into measurable research questions. If you skip any of these steps, your entire foundation is going to crumble. Okay, once your problem is locked in, domain 2 steps up, requiring you to be a highly critical consumer of literature. Now, I know it's super tempting to just lean on broad textbook summaries, especially when you feel like you're drowning in hundreds of articles. But you have to show a clear preference for primary sources. We're talking peer-reviewed, empirical studies. You're out there hunting for methodological weaknesses or contradictions in the original work. It's an investigation, not just a glorified book report. And a vital, though frequently misunderstood, part of Domain 2 is the theoretical framework. Your literature review needs to be anchored by a specific theory, say Vygotsky's zone of proximal development or Krashen's input hypothesis. This isn't just background reading for the sake of a word count. This theory becomes the actual lens through which you'll eventually interpret all your findings. It's what gives your study its explanatory power. Which brings us to phase 3, designing the blueprint. This encompasses domains 3 and 4. Honestly, this is arguably the most technically demanding part of your MA journey, focusing heavily on your methodology and how you actually validate your instruments. Domain 3 is all about your research design. Whether you decide to go with a quasi-experimental, pre-test/post-test, a descriptive survey, a case study, or action research, you must rigorously justify why you chose it. But even more importantly, you've got to anticipate threats to your validity. For example, if you're running an experiment over a semester, how do you prove your students didn't just naturally mature or simply get better at taking the test? Your design has to mathematically account for that kind of stuff. Let's move to and see how this builds directly into Domain 4, instrument validation. You can't just write up a quick quiz and hand it out to your participants. It's a structured, chronological process. You design the original instrument, sure. Then you send it to an expert jury to establish content validity. After that, you conduct a pilot study to catch any confusing wording or ambiguities. And finally, you calculate its statistical reliability, usually using something like Cronbach's alpha. And while you're designing these tools, you need to know exactly what kind of measurement you're after. Think of formative assessment tools as the rehearsal. You're monitoring ongoing learning and giving feedback along the way. Summative assessment tools, on the other hand, are opening night. You're evaluating the final learning against a set standard. Knowing the difference here literally dictates how you build your entire rubric. All right, into phase 4, gathering and analyzing data. Now we're in the construction phase, tackling domains V and VI, where you actually run your study and apply statistical reasoning to whatever you find. Domain V is where the rubber meets the road. It's data collection time. The golden rule here? Standardization. Whether you're managing an instructional treatment or keeping a qualitative field journal, your procedures must be identical across the board to minimize any researcher bias. If you've got an experimental group and a control group, you have to verify they're comparable before you even start the pretest. Once you've got all that data, Domain VI is all about analysis. Now, if statistics make you a bit nervous, trust me, you are not alone. But selecting the right statistical test in software like SPSS doesn't have to be a total nightmare. It's essentially a flowchart. If your data meets certain assumptions, like having a normal distribution, you use parametric tests like a t-test or a one-way ANOVA. But if it doesn't meet those assumptions, you simply pivot to the non-parametric equivalents like the Mann-Whitney U or Krosko-Wallace. You just have to remember to test those underlying assumptions first. So the crucial point is avoiding a trap that so many novice researchers fall into, which is assuming that getting a p-value under 0.05 is the absolute finish line. It really isn't. You absolutely must also calculate the effect size. Think Cohen's d or eta squared. The p-value just tells you a difference exists, right? But the effect size tells you the magnitude of that finding. It tells you if that difference actually matters in the real practical world of education or linguistics. Finally, we reach Phase 5, Writing and Professional Conduct. We're in the home stretch now with Domains 7 and 8, shifting our focus to academic communication and, of course, your final defense. Domain 7 is all about formatting and writing. From a highly concise abstract through the 5 core chapters, all the way down to your references and appendices, there is a very strict, standardized structure you have to follow. This is your map, and you're expected to navigate it using formal, precise academic English, which means mastering the art of hedging your claims. And within that writing, strict academic integrity is completely non-negotiable. This means fully mastering APA 7th edition formatting. It means avoiding all forms of plagiarism, including verbatim copying and that sneaky patch writing. And, crucially in today's landscape, you have to recognize that any uncredited use of AI to generate content constitutes serious academic misconduct. Just don't risk it. Our final domain, Domain 8, steps back to evaluate your overall professional conduct. This is where you demonstrate your maturity as a developing academic. It means responding constructively to your supervisor's feedback and hitting every single submission deadline. It means strictly protecting the confidentiality of your human participants. And ultimately, it all culminates in the viva voce, your final defense, where you have to confidently and professionally articulate your rationale and methodology to your committee. And there you have it, 8 complete domains of competence. Every single chapter you write, every survey you hand out, and every interaction you have with your committee is simply an opportunity to prove your mastery of these specific foundational skills. Which leaves us with one final provocative thought. True mat-level competence isn't about hiding your flaws or pretending your study was 100% perfect. It's about intellectual honesty. So as you build your own thesis blueprint, ask yourself, can you critically and honestly evaluate the limitations of your own work? Because admitting those limitations doesn't undermine your research. It's actually the ultimate proof of your maturity as a researcher.